there, I'm CJ Ananda, and I'm here today to share with you the philosophy of Ashtanga. So welcome to the Moments of Wisdom. Ashtanga, the philosophy, is about the 8-limbed path of yoga, and this has been brought to us by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras. So what Patanjali has taught us over the years is that these are simple guidelines and steps to living a meaningful and purposeful life. And they're really steps that a yogi passes through in order to attain awakening and to attain a spiritual enlightenment. So I'm going to walk through each of these steps with you individually, but I also want you to know that I'll go through in other moments of wisdom in more detail some of these individual steps of the Eightfold Path. And also I do offer yoga teacher trainings here 2 times a year in beautiful Troncones on the beach in Mexico. So feel free to come join us here for a more advanced practice and just more in-depth philosophy about the Yoga Sutras. So our first yoga limb is called Yamas. And Yamas are really about the ethical standards, the way in which we live our life. It's kind of the external practices that we have that allow us to share our sense of integrity, our truth. So they're really like moral disciplines, how we conduct our lives out there in the world. They include things like being truthful, practicing nonviolence, practicing not stealing, being moderate in that which we do, having self-control, not coveting, not having greed or having a need for power. So those are kind of the external practices that are a part of the Yama practice. And then the second path, the second limb, is called Niyamas. And the Niyamas are more about the internal practices. So these are spiritual practices, they're observances, they're really about the self-restraints that we have. So practicing self-disciplines such as purity and cleanliness from within and without, contentment and ease, feeling really natural and secure and satisfied in that which you have. Feeling a sense of discipline, wanting to study, having a self-practice, having the sense of really the introspection that is guided to us from the ancient wisdoms that are out there. There's also the sense of surrendering to the divine or to God and having a belief and trust in that there's something beyond us that is guiding us on our path. So those are some of the internal practices that are incorporated in the Niyamas. So then beyond the Yamas and Niyamas, we move into our third limb, which is Asana. And Asana most people know about as our yoga postures. And so this really is our yoga postures. It's about doing our physical practice, the strengthening, the flexibility, which ultimately brings our physical body and our mind together through the breath. And by bringing those two together, we come to a state of awakening. Also in our physical practice, you notice that we're often focused on alignment, aligning not just our physical being, but aligning our spiritual being, aligning our spiritual anatomy, our chakras, which will ultimately, again, bring us to that sense of awakening and connecting to spirit. So the asana becomes a spiritual and a purification process, which then brings us to our fourth limb, which is pranayama. And pranayama, when broken down, really means breath control. Controlling of the breath or restraining of the breath is a practice that we use to really slow down the thoughts in the mind. So the more we can slow down the breath, the more we begin to slow down the thoughts, the more we begin to cleanse our system and awaken the mind through the steadiness of the breath. So as you find yourself practicing pranayama, you'll notice that you begin to awaken a sense of inner peace within. So once we move from our pranayama practice, we move into our fifth practice, or our fifth limb, which is called Pratyahara. And Pratyahara is really known as withdrawal of the senses. And I really like to think of it as withdrawal of the mind, because we need to withdraw the mind in order to withdraw the senses. So as we think about all the stimulus, the external sensations out and around us, letting that not become a distraction, but become an internal awareness. So we draw in that which is around us. We observe those cravings, we observe those distractions, and we draw them in so we move beyond the external world and begin to move into a greater sense of clarity and stillness within. And moving on from Pratyahara, we come into what's called Dharana. Dharana is a point of concentration. It's really a one-pointed focus. So we can use a tool for this. Often the breath is a great tool to use. We often can use our chakras as a point of focus. We can use a mantra as a point of focus. We can use an external object like a candle. So really bringing that one-pointed focus in is giving us the opportunity to focus the mind and slow down the thoughts, which is ultimately how we are led then to a state of meditation. And leading to that then, our seventh practice, or our seventh limb, is Dhyana. And Dhyana is really about the meditative practice. It's merging now the mind and spirit. And so rather than having that external focus, we draw the attention inward to the point of contemplation, to really sitting in the stillness of what exists within. It's really a quieting of the mind and an opening of the heart. So as we come to this place, we find ourselves in divine radiance, in an open connectedness with spirit. As we connect to spirit, we start to reveal to ourselves from spirit the answers that we may have to our questions. We start to receive different kinds of healing, different kinds of inspiration, and different kinds of nurturing. So by connecting to spirit, we are now connected to our higher self, our higher soul, and our most enlightened state of being. And then finally, from the Dhyana practice, we move into what is called Samadhi. And Samadhi is really our final state of being. As Patanjali refers to it, it is bliss. It is bliss, it is ecstasy, it is enlightenment. Some people think of it as nirvana. And it's really merging the individual self with our universal spirit. So as these two come together, we find that interconnectedness in all that exists. We see ourselves in everything that exists around us, and we know that we are a part of everything, and everything is a part of us. So as we start to merge into that state of oneness, we start to expand into that vastness. So there's this vastness and yet the nothingness. It is all just one. It is that greater state of consciousness. So the first four of these limbs are really about the mastery of the body. You know, as we talk about the Yamas and the Niyamas, the ethical standards, and the Asana practice and the Pranayama, the physical practice, those are working with the body to bring us into the next four states, which is about the senses and the mind and the higher states of consciousness with the Pratyahara and the Dharana, the Dhyana, and the Samadhi. So ultimately, with Patanjali's practice, he really states that through these disciplines, you know, through our practice and our experience and our devotion, we are led to what all of humanity is striving toward, is the attainment of peace. So that's what I offer you today, is the attainment of peace. And I thank you so much for joining me in this moment of wisdom, and look forward to seeing you in many more. Thank you. Namaste.